Without further ado, I'd like to introduce the woman who plays many roles in my life and as well in hers, my mom, Jules.
Good evening. Thank you so much for being here tonight. In this, my 30th year of living with type 1 diabetes, I'm honored to stand before you and share my family's story. As I began to prepare for the speech, it occurred to me that it was on this very night, February 8th, 2007, that type 1 diabetes began to unmask itself in my beautiful, just turned 5-year-old daughter, Emma. After we tucked her into bed that night, she quickly drained her sippy cup and just as quickly filled her pull-up, calling out for more water. My husband and I recognized her symptoms as classic signs of type 1 diabetes. Imagine living a life where every crumb you eat, every calorie you burn, has to be balanced with a high-risk medicine called insulin. Nothing can prepare you for this diagnosis in a small child, even living with the exact same disease yourself. It broke our hearts. 7 years ago tomorrow, Emma was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, now having lived more than half of her short life with this disease. Even though I've lived most of my life with type 1 diabetes, I never imagined that one of my children would also be diagnosed with it. My husband and I now function as a makeshift pancreas for my daughter and myself, day in and day out. There's a wide range of emotions that occur when diagnosed with a chronic disease. It's an inharmonious mess of sorts. Living in the moment, however, which is a gift from this disease, has taught me to live fully, without regret or surrender. I've been lovingly called a dream crusher on occasion by my children. Answering this question certainly could have given life to the name. Mama, how many days do I have to do this? It only took a few hours with a fresh diagnosis for me to realize that type 1 diabetes in my daughter wasn't the same disease I live day to day with. I had to learn to look at type 1 diabetes through the eyes of a 5-year-old. Because how do you explain to your child that you're sticking needles into her body to help her when all she knows is that she's scared and you're hurting her? After wishing diabetes off the planet at the ripe age of 5, my daughter told me, "Mom, you know what diabetes feels like to you, but you don't know what diabetes feels like to me." And it turns out she was right. Blown away that my 5-year-old, come type 1 diabetes guru, could tell me the way things were, I cried and told her, "Honey, you are so right. I don't know." And with that emotional undercurrent, we waded into the muck and immediate life changes demanded by the presence of a chronic disease. As overwhelming as all of the changes were, I was at least grateful that the technologies are better now than when I was a kid. I was diagnosed in 1984 at the age of 13, way back in what my kids call the olden days, when glucometers and Google didn't even exist. I'd poke my finger, place blood on a strip, wipe it with a cotton ball, and hold it up to a color chart on the side of the vial. Super high-tech at the time. Insulin pumps and continuous glucose monitors have revolutionized blood sugar control, and these advances are in no small part due to the research efforts and financial backing of JDRF. But this technology is far from a cure. Despite advances, not much has changed since the discovery of insulin in 1922. The basic tenets of care remain the same: insulin, testing your blood sugar, and diet. As a nurse myself, I know the type 1 diabetes is one of the most difficult diseases to manage in a child. Type 1 diabetes is a relentless disease. It never takes a day off or a time out when you're exhausted and need a good night's sleep. It's 24/7, 365 days a year, every year until a cure is found. There's no perfect with type 1 diabetes. Although most things are measured by numbers, life happens to be fluid. Everything is always changing, and diabetes needs to be managed differently day to day because of that. As a result, parenting to type 1 diabetes is basically a giant science experiment. And guess what? That science experiment runs whether Emma is under my watchful eye or out of arm's reach. As a parent, it requires the ability to carry out two opposing tasks at once: controlling and letting go. These two things are seriously impossible to master at the same time. It's sort of like trying to swim underwater without holding your breath. Diabetes has invaded my household, my body, and my mind down to the cellular level. I live and breathe diabetes. It's never out of my thoughts. My mind is full of numbers, percentages, carbohydrate counts, and things most other people never give a thought about. I take care of all the behind-the-scenes diabetes things. All of this hides behind the curtain and under our dresses tonight, so all you can see is normal. Managed diligently, I've done more than I could imagine with type 1 diabetes. I've carried it across the Grand Canyon, on marathons, up rock faces, through love and childbirth, and many other countless adventures. It's fiercely influenced my healthy diet, my love of exercise, and my sense of compassion for others living with chronic disease. Sometimes I feel like type 1 diabetes is a living, breathing thing. A thing that I talk to, a thing that I'd love to say goodbye to. We'd be really good at waving goodbye, wouldn't we, Emma? Emma and I stand before you tonight as the face of type 1 diabetes. We are alive, literally, due to medical innovations, research, thoughtful living, and the loving support of my husband, John, and my oldest daughter, Hannah. It has been no small feat. We would love to live unencumbered by technology, dietary restrictions, and the constant threat on our lives. With your generosity tonight, we can treat, prevent, and cure type 1 diabetes and wish it off the planet for good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. These messages of courage, strength, and hope resonate with all of us, I'm sure. Please keep everyone living with T1D in mind as we start our Fun to Cure this evening. Many of you in the audience know that now we have come to the most important part of the evening. This is where we all get to take part in the incredible research being funded by JDRF to help find a cure for T1D. Please keep in mind that all the funds contributed tonight during this portion of the evening are directed 100% to research and are fully tax deductible. JDRF's Fund to Cure is a very special auction of passion, our mission moment, if you will.